Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. As I said in my last video, today I'll be making a baby pure PKing guide. It will be a pretty basic guide, so if you have been PKing a lot, you most likely know most of this stuff, but I would still recommend you to watch this because there are some things that you might have missed. I will split this video up into different sections and I will put timestamps in the description in order to make it easier to find different parts. I hope you guys enjoy and let's get right into it. Baby Pure Godspell PKing is a really fun way to learn how to PK. It's also quite cheap and doesn't require too much stats, and the account can be built in about, I would say, a couple of weeks, even if you don't play too much. So if you want to get into PKing, this is definitely one of the best ways to go. This first part will be about the settings that you use in order to PK. When it comes to like mouse, the game settings, etc. I will begin talking about the F keys. As you most likely already know, you can use your F keys in order to change between tabs instead of like clicking like this. And it really helps you because then you can focus on clicking on like your inventory or your opponent or your special attack or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely worth it to learn and get used to using F keys. The F keys I use is F2 for attacks, F1 for inventory, F5 for gear, F3 for prayers, and F4 for mage. It's really a matter of personal preference what you use, so you don't have to copy that if you don't want to. So yeah, another thing is the camera rotation that many people actually don't know about this, but you can rotate the camera by with mouse button 3, and that means it's pressing your scrolling wheel and holding it, and you can rotate the camera like this. It's really convenient because then you can have your left hand on your F keys at all times. That saves you a lot of time. Instead of like going to the arrow keys and rotating the camera really slowly like this, you can just have the left hand on F keys at all times, so you can switch between tabs and at the same time rotate the camera and zoom in and out. The next thing I will talk about is mouse sensitivity, which also is a matter of personal preference. I use a very low mouse sensitivity, but I know people use pretty high and are also pretty decent PKers. One thing I would recommend though is turning your mouse acceleration off. In a Windows computer you do that by going into your mouse settings, and there's a box that says Enhance Pointer Precision, and you turn the thing off. What that does is that your mouse sensitivity is no longer dependent on how fast you move the mouse. So for example, if you do a switch really slowly, or you do it really fast, you do the exact same movement, which is great for your muscle memory. Another thing I would recommend is using the fixed screen mode that you can change here. Especially if you're playing on a big screen, it will just make it more convenient, in my opinion. But that is also a matter of personal preference. So in this next section I will be talking about your account build, and I will focus on two different pure account builds. One being 60 attack pure and one being 50 attack pure. If you're completely new, you should definitely go for a 60 attack pure, as it's easier to PK on and a lot more all around. On a 50 attack pure, the only spec weapon you're going to be using is a Gmaul, and if you want to try like different kind of setups and stuff, so definitely go for the 60 attack build. It has a little bit less KO potential, but it's a great build to learn on. The minimum stats you should go for is 85 mage for the TB. You can have like 82 and pot up, but it's kind of annoying to do. Just go for 85, in my opinion. You should also try to match your range level to your mage, because you can, if you have 85 mage, you can get 85 range without getting any combat levels at all. If you're going for the 60 attack with 85 mage, you can get around 70 strength without it affecting your combat level too much. I'd also suggest to get 45 prayer for the Mystic Might. You can get 52 for Smite later, but if you're just starting out, just go for 45 to begin with and see where you go from that. Now I'll be going through the quests that you need or should complete before going out PKing on a baby pure. If you're going for the 60 attack pure, you definitely need to complete the Lost City quest to use the Dragon Dagger. Another thing is Dragon Slayer. You don't need to complete it, but you have to start it in order to use the anti-dragon shield and anti-fire potions. And most people who PK on low-level pures use the Dragonstone Bolts E, which deal dragon fire damage, and that can hit quite a lot if you don't have any protection from dragon fire. So definitely go for the 30 quest points or whatever you need to start Dragon Slayer and start it, and get yourself an anti-dragon shield or anti-fire potions. Now here are two optional quests for those two items, which is the Mithril Gloves and the Unholy Book. The Mithril Gloves is basically a cheap version of a combat bracelet. A combat bracelet is around 12k, while the Mithril Gloves are around 1k. But the stats are the same. So if you want to save money on your depths, then definitely go for the Mithril Gloves, which requires you to complete some parts of the recipe for disaster, and it can be quite time consuming. If you don't feel like you have the time, it's fine. The combat bracelet is not too expensive anyway. The other quest that is quite optional is the Horror from the Deep to get an Unholy Book. It gives a bit of attack bonuses, but it doesn't matter too much. And also, if you don't have it, you can use an anti-dragon shield on your shield slot, which will save you from Dragonfire, and you don't need to use anti-fire potions. And since in this guide I will be going through Godspell PKing, you need to complete the Mage Arena 1 for the cape and for the staff. Now I will go through the gear and inventory setup. So this is the gear I would recommend you to use if you're new to PKing. A hat, the God Cape, preferably Zamorak, because the Zami spell is really the most convenient of the three God spells. Dragonstone Bolts E, Amulet of Glory, Zamorak Staff, Blue Wizard Robe, Anti-Dragon Shield, or the Unholy Book if you have done the quest for it. Zamorak Monk Bottom. And if you have completed parts of Desert Treasure, you can use Ghostly Robes, which is better. A Combat Bracelet or Mithril Gloves, Climbing Boots, and a Ring of Recoil. As for the inventory, you should have a couple of Super Restores, a couple of brews. The amount of brews is quite optional. I would say the more experienced you are with PKing, the more brews you should bring. I would recommend you to start out with 2 or 3 brews and see where you land. What this means is if you have fewer brews and more manta rays, you can combo eat more. And the only times you really should be using manta rays is to combo eat like this. So you click the manta ray, then you click the brew. You have combo 8. And also don't forget to restore, because saradomin brews drain your stats. So after 2 or 3 brews, you should always drink a super restore. And that's another thing about brews. They don't count as food. They count as drinks, so they don't delay your attack. So you can constantly be drinking brews while you keep attacking your opponent. Here's a good example of using brews properly. I was fighting this guy with a Kodai wand, and I camped Smite against him for pretty much the entire fight. And that means he will do a lot of damage to me, because he will be hitting me off prayer pretty much every time. But since I'm using brews, and since they are not interrupting my attacks, I can deal almost constant damage to him, while also staying safe from his attacks and not giving him any KO potential. So as you can see, so far I haven't used a single manta ray. I have just been using taking sips of brews all the time, and I'm pretty much staying full HP at all times. And that's another thing. There is nothing called safing in the deep wild if you're an Nhing. So if someone calls you a safer, they are probably doing that either because they are new and don't know how it works, or they purposely want you to stay low on food so they can kill you easier. The combo food should really only be used, I would say, when you're half HP or less, or if they are running at you with a Gmaul or something. If you're more than half HP and they're frozen and they're not going for the spec, you should be fine with just keep sipping on your brews. Now I didn't manage to kill this guy because he ran away, but I managed to outlast him, even though he had a Kodai wand, and I camped Smite for pretty much the entire fight. So this goes to show how efficient it is to sip brews between your attacks in order to not lose momentum in a fight. The runes you should use for Godspell PKing is Mist runes, Lava runes, the 3 TB runes, Death runes, Chaos runes, and Lore runes, the Nature runes, and Blood runes. This is the best and cheapest combination of runes to be able to cast Flames of Sami, Entangle, and Teleblock. You should also have a looting bag, a super combat or a super strength potion, a range potion, and your range switch. So this will be your range, this will be your mage. You should learn how to switch as fast as possible. That you can practice outside of the wilderness just to get comfortable with it. You could use just the cape and not use the Avas accumulator and just two-way switch, which is easier. But the reason I use the Avas accumulator also is partly because it saves a lot of bolts. If you're not too rich, they can be quite expensive. And also it's good to learn how to three-way switch if you're going to be PKing on a main, or if you want to use an occult amulet or another switch. So for practice reasons, it's better to have a three-way switch, but sometimes if you want to fight someone and you're not really comfortable with the three-way switching, you can go for the two-way switch. But yeah, definitely practice the three-way switch. And for spec weapon, you should use a DDS, and obviously if you are 50 attack, use the Gmaul. Oh, and another thing about the 50 attack pure, and the reason I wouldn't recommend it to new PKers, is that you have to use a granite maul that has recently been updated, that it consumes 60% of your special attack bar, which means it's pretty bad unless you use the upgrade on it, and currently the upgrade is around 800k, which means that you're basically PKing with a +1 on a low level pure, and if you're a new PKer you will be dying a lot, and you probably will get either smited or forget to protect item, which means you're at a risk of losing a lot of money. So that's another reason why I would recommend this, using the 60 attack pure and Dragon Dagger for special attack. And this brings me to my next point. Don't use a +1, which means one very expensive item that you don't expect to lose because you're using the protect item. If you're new to PKing, there's a lot of stuff that you need to worry about, like your hit points, your prayer, what praise to pray, what offensive praise to use, what combat style to use, and so on. And it's easy to forget something, and it's very likely that you sometimes will forget to protect item, or you will get smited by your opponent, or you will just forget to super restore your prayer backup. So a lot of things can happen which can lead to you losing your expensive item. The way to practice this is to pretend that you do have an expensive item even though you don't, and check like every time you die, did you have protect item on or not? If you get comfortable with it, you always die with your protect item on, your prayer doesn't drop too often, then you can move on and start using a +1. So before you go to on a PKing trip, You should also anglerfish to overheal your hit points, drink a dose of stamina, and drink an anti-fire if you don't have an anti-dragon shield. Also, don't forget to use the charge spell before going out and PKing on god spells, since it will make your Zemiflames hit 30s instead of 20s. And it will last for 6 minutes until you have to cast the charge again. We're going to east dragons, we're going to use the Corporal Beast teleport with the game's necklace. Get to the cave, pray melee once you go out of the cave in order... Okay, now there weren't any ends, but sometimes there are a lot of ends to attack here, so yeah. Then you just run east all the way to here. Okay, so I found this bot here, and the first thing you want to do to them is you want to instantly throw a TB. Then you freeze them, and then you can't just mage them if you want to, but to practice the switch you can use both attack styles, both range and mage. You can sometimes also go in for the specs, like here, and then go back. And if they run, you try to freeze them. So yeah, practice your switches. Also, what you should think about is the 15% prayers. And you want to change your 15% prayer before you change your gear. Like this. So, seems like he has a lot of food. But also think about another thing is to change your attack styles right before you attack them, so they have less time to react. Now this guy was obviously a bot, so he won't react. But if it was a real player, it would give them a lot less time to react. So compared, like, if I switch the mage instantly here, and then attack, he has like 3 seconds to react. Well, if I change range, like here, he has almost no time to react. So change your gear right before you're going to attack. That's another tip. Okay, let's see if I can kill this bot. He has a lot of food. He has probably no risk at all. And if I kill them right before 50k. So let's say this is a player, and I've TB'd him, and I have entangled him. So now I attack him with mage. So really I should, before I attack with mage, turn this Mystic Might on, then cast the mage. Now I want to go for a range attack. So before going for a range attack, I turn on my Eagle Eye, switch to my inventory, switch to my range gear, and attack the dummy. Now I want to go back to my mage, so I turn on Mystic Might, switch to my mage gear, and attack the dummy. And now I want to go in for a spec, so I switch on. This is the most important prayer when you're using your special attack, especially against other pures. This is pretty optional, but it boosts your accuracy. So I go in for those 2 prayers, or if you don't feel like you have time to pray this, only pray this one. And I pot up. Oh yeah, that's another thing. I forgot to pot up my range, but you should also you should do it in the same motion as you switch. So pot up in the same motion. Don't pot up before you're going out to the wilderness, because the potion will run out. So anyway, now I want to go for the spec, and I pot up, wield my DDS, and spec them. After you have used your special attack, they will most likely pray melee, so you want to switch back to your rune crossbow. Unless they don't pray melee, then you should just keep on specking them, because the special attack is your best way of dealing a lot of damage. Now I will be talking a little bit about priorities in a fight and what you should think about. The number one reason why new PKers die is because they don't eat high enough, or they forget to eat at all. So your very first priority should be keeping your HP high. I would say you should aim for keeping it over 60 or 70% of your max HP at all times. Your second priority should be keeping your prayer up, because it's important to have your prayer to protect against your opponent's attacks and to boost your own attacks. Your third priority should be having the right protection prayer against your opponent. So if he uses range, you should be praying range. If he uses mage, pray mage. And this is especially important. So even if he doesn't melee you, if he runs towards you, should always pray melee. Now your fourth priority should be using the right 15% prayers against your opponent. It is definitely a good way to boost your damage, but it's not as important as the other things I mentioned. One thing that is worth mentioning is that when you are in the wilderness, you will encounter both PVMers, bots, and other PKers. And if you want to get better at PKing, in the beginning you can fight only PVMers to get your switches, get your prayers and stuff like that. But to improve, you will need to fight other PKers. If you only want to keep killing PVMers, that's fine. But if you want to improve, as I said, fight other PKers as well. And you will die quite a lot in the beginning, and you kind of have to accept it. And I would recommend having some kind of money source other than PvP in order to keep up the supply and item cost. But as you will get better, you will get more and more kills, you will get more and more comfortable, and after a while you will probably make more money than you lose on PKing. One other great way to practice is last man standing. It's what you currently see. It is not on pure accounts because everyone is maxed there and has a little bit different gear. But the basics are pretty much the same, and you can practice your switches, practice praying the right prayers, and so on. And it's also completely free to do, so you can definitely do that. And at the end of the day, just have fun with it. Try not to be toxic against other people, and if people are toxic, just either turn your public chat off or just ignore them. I hope this guide will help you, and if you have any questions or if you feel like I've missed something, feel free to comment down below.